In the 40% who still aren't subscribed, why aren't you? It's free. Welcome to the coolest place to be every Thursday at noon Eastern. If you think fixing our workplace can fix our world, I got a real treat for you today about emotionally intelligent ethics and compliance.
Okay, get out of here. Get out of here. How's it going, everybody? That's my son, Gio, doing the intro for me, carrying the weight around here. Welcome to the coolest place to be. We're talking about emotionally intelligent ENC. We're up to almost 800 emojis so far, so that's an amazing start to what's going to be a phenomenal episode. I'm going to run through a couple of quick announcements here. If this is your first time coming, this is the place to come every Thursday if you want to get some free credit. So if you're with SHRM, if you have a designation with SHRM or HRCI or the Compliance Certification Board, HCCA or CCE, this is the place to come. And if you have it for both, you can George Costanza it and do some double dipping. We won't even say a word about it. I want to tell you a little bit about the update to our tool. We're constantly updating our tool. We're investing a ton of money into our tool to make it better. Now is the time for our industry. You know, we're really at this kind of inflection point where the load on us, the changes that are coming, the load on us is increasing. The scope of our work is increasing, and many times the resources are not increasing along with it. Welcome to compliance and HR and legal. We have upgraded our tool to try to give you better information at your fingertips so you can make better bets with your time. So new dashboard, new look and feel, better business results, better engagement, better efficiency, so you can sleep at night and make sure and rest assured that you have a an effective program. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a video here just to give you a little taste of what we got going on. That's boring. Imagine looking at that every day. Ooh, imagine looking at that every day. Imagine seeing all that data right there at your fingertips, being able to customize that and really direct your efforts for the things that are going to move the needle first. So if you're interested in checking that out, now is the time to do it. Also, recently we did Ethicsverse Day 2.0. This apparently was the largest attended, the biggest ethics event ever. We had over 4,500 signups, 4 phenomenal sessions. So if you missed any of those sessions, check out our YouTube channel, Official Ethico. That'll be dropped into the chat. You can see all those replays there for free. And if you don't have time to sit through that, we have a great white paper. It's an ebook that covers all the biggest takeaways from the day. Of course, that's free because we love you. So that'll be in the chat as well. And I think it might be on the console. So it's all about becoming the Office of Unlock. It goes through the 4 different sessions, one on whistleblowers, one on actually using AI and building the resiliency inside your program to handle all the changes from AI. We had insights from DOJ experts so that we know exactly what DOJ is looking for, what it's going to take to build an effective program. And then finally, we had a mindset session with the one and only Dr. Hema Lomax that will leave you super energized. So go ahead and download that. I'm sure you're going to love it. Also, go ahead and download something new, okay? There's so much great thought leadership out there. There's so many great ideas out there. It's on you to continue to feed your brain. Like my mom always said, readers are leaders. And also, I encourage you to check out the Ethics Experts. This is the fastest growing top 2% global podcast, fastest growing ethics compliance podcast in the world. We always have great guests, not because the host is great, but because the guests are great and they really get a platform to share their insights. So we just had episode 225, if you can believe it, with the one and only Jackie Pruitt. She's a former regulator and talks a lot about how you can do more with less and really drive effectiveness forward in your program. That's what we're all looking for every single day through the eyes of a former regulator. So let me share this little clip with you real quick. You got to check this podcast out. I'm not even kidding.
We are the relationship department. I really do see that that's what ethics and compliance is. We are not the police. We are the relationship department. I've done a lot of my own networking through LinkedIn globally. And what I hear over and over and over is we don't have funding. We don't have support. We are this island, this little silo, and no one likes us. And I'm like, I never am seen as the police. I'm seen as this person that people could come to. And I think that that's what ethics and compliance really needs to be. We're the hotline. How do we get people to come and talk to us if they don't like us?
Yeah, exactly.
If they don't trust us.
Exactly. So Jackie says a lot of smart things. I just say exactly a lot on the podcast. So if you like the way I say that word, you're going to love this podcast. We're giving away some books today. We're featuring Christian Hunt's book, Humanizing Rules. There's a bunch of behavioral science behind or within, soaked into the pages here. And we also are going to be featuring, I didn't get the graphic up, sorry, Abby. Evie's new book, Let's Talk About Ethics. It's a really cool journal for people in the ethics space that really want to drive some ethics forward. So a lot of people, they mute this whole session, or they mute these sessions every week, and they really come for the chat. So if you have not dropped your LinkedIn URL in the chat, let me encourage you to do that. Drop in where you're coming from today. Drop your LinkedIn URL in the chat. Connect with one person, because your network is your net worth. Neither are big enough. Also, I want to share quickly, I'm very proud of this. We were awarded Best Ethics and Compliance Software in the World. Round of applause to the Ethico team. We were the momentum leader, and we have a special going on right now for our new risk assessment tool. It's incumbent on us to make the right bets with our time, make the right bets with the resources that have been entrusted to us, and direct our efforts toward the things that are really going to move the needle to mitigate risk in our organization, drive that culture of integrity forward, the authentic culture of integrity, to ultimately improve the bottom line and build more, excellence inside of our business. So our risk assessment tool allows for that. It's super flexible, and it's 50% off for Ethicsverse attendees, okay? And we also have this other package, which I'll be sharing throughout the session. This is the DOJ defense package. It gives you everything you need to drive that effective program forward. Again, put those remediation plans in place, understand which risks are at play, and really start crowdsourcing more of that risk intelligence at scale across the organization. All right. With all that, let's get a massive emoji explosion. Let's see what we're up to right now. We're already at 2,700. I got a good feeling for today. We got the one and only Evie and Julius. How you guys doing today?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much. So I will piggyback off your giveaways, and I am going to be giving away 3 of these Let's Talk About Ethics t-shirts, because I think every day we need to be having those kind of conversations. So I'm super excited.
And, Evie also runs the Ethical Edge. So if you are interested in learning some more about what she might be able to do to help your business or help your program, I highly encourage you to at least connect with her and Julius today. Their links are on the side of the console there. Go ahead and connect with them. Connect with me if you like me. But definitely reach out to Evie. She's got so much great thought leadership, so many great insights on how to build a better program, how to really drive an authentic culture, an authentic ethical culture throughout the organization to start to activate those human sensors. All right. With that, let's dive right in. What are we talking about today? We're talking about, let's talk about ethics. What do you think, Evie?
Oh, sounds great. I wanted to give Julius a chance to introduce himself, and we can dive right in.
All right, Julius, over to you.
Well, hi, everyone. Julius here, founder of the People Readiness Company, and I'm very excited to be part of this conversation today. Thanks for having me.
Well, buckle up, you guys, because we got a great session for you today. So let's kind of start off at a high level here. I want to discuss what some of these modern compliance challenges are. So how has the compliance landscape kind of evolved to demand more emotional intelligence from us, from our profession? Evie, let's start with you.
So, I've been doing compliance in about 20 years, and I was there from the beginning of building ethics and compliance programs. And initially, it was a challenge to get a hotline. It was initially a challenge to get policies across and, vendor due diligence and all these concepts. But it evolved for 20 years. So I say right now, we're in a kind of a crossroad of it's time to level up. So we know what the expectation is. They're given to us by DOJs and by the various laws and regulations. But now we have to do more. So what I love to do is connecting ethics and compliance and making it into people-friendly programs, like human-centric programs. So when I learned about Julius's company and the things that they do, I was really excited, because I feel like together we could take compliance to the next level. So I'm super, super happy. I did wanted to go over some of the statistics also. We have 88% of employees now prioritize corporate culture and choosing, where they want to work. They want to work with places and companies that stand for their values and have a good corporate culture of ethics, compliance, and integrity. There is Gen Z, 69% is preferring positive company culture. So we have to be able to drive those things. And I think one way to get there, it's not the only way, but one way to get there is to consider emotional intelligence when working on our compliance programs.
Well, I think that's a good point. And, you kind of talked about how so many job seekers today are really prioritizing the ethical culture. I've seen a massive increase in this over the last 10 years in terms of like how how much of a focus that somebody I'm interviewing for a position has on the ethical culture. What is the culture like? What are the values of the organization? And I think given that the prioritization list has shifted significantly, like I bet my grandfather coming back from World War II was not asking about what's the culture of the company. You know what I'm saying? That shift in prioritization creates a massive opportunity for us as practitioners in this space to activate that and to resonate with that and get ultimately more engagement, more of the magic, more of the genius unleashed from all these, these human beings inside of our company. What would you add to that, Julius?
I mean, I generally agree with you guys. I think there's a shift already in the last 2 decades from, I always say in our industry, we talk about the relationship between an employer and an employee, right? So I think you mentioned your grandfather. Back then, I think an employer really was a provider. So I went to work, so I make money so I can provide for my family. And so that relationship was pretty much, I think, defined by an employee-employee relationship. I think today it's really about, or much more about, choosing an employer to emphasize my personal individuality and values. So we're making different selections. So it's not just about, how much money do I make, but also working for that company, does it somehow amplify my own values, and can I contribute through my work with this employer to something that I want to contribute in this world, if that makes sense. So the entire perspective of how we build culture definitely changed from 30 years ago and where we are today. Yeah.
Julius, your collar is tickling that mic a little bit. It's giving us a little bit of static.
It shouldn't, because I'm not using that microphone. I'm using a different microphone.
Well, we will find. We're going to do a real live investigation here. All good.
All right.
But I think.
But let me double check. Not that I'm saying something wrong, so you guys good at it, and I'm investigating here too.
Okay. You're seeing it live. Okay, this is how the show is. All right. So the shifting expectation. How can we really, as practitioners, if we're running an HR program or we're part of the legal department or we are a compliance practitioner, how can we begin to start to embody more or push out more of this emotional intelligence that's going to resonate more and really kind of demonstrate this culture of compliance that everybody seems to be kind of prioritizing to a greater degree today?
So that's a really good question. And I think there's a 2-part answer to it, where we have to look at the employees, and I talked about it on the Ethicsverse back in April, I believe, is what kind of employees are we getting in? And with some of the tools that Julius can talk about, is we can maybe see if they are open-minded and self-aware, and those are some good qualities that can help us. But we also have to make sure that, and we talk about it a lot, train our middle managers. And that's something that is going to be coming back, to make sure that our middle managers are ready and equipped. And again, Julius has great tools on how to help with that session. So I think companies have to be ready to invest and look into different programs about emotional intelligence, and not only have the foundations and all the great tools, but really invest in their people.
Yeah, and I think, part of that investment, of course, can be, a session, a training or something like that. But I think, or I would say, and I think what really reinforces it is prioritizing this concept in our day-to-day interactions with each other and modeling the behavior that we're looking for to help it kind of unleash from everybody. Like, everybody has this desire in them to work in a great workplace, right? Everybody kind of wants an ethical workplace where they can trust the things that they're being told, whether it's by the company or whether it's by their coworkers. But a lot of us are walking around with this, as my friend Ellen calls them sort of ethical refugees, people that have been jaded by bad experiences in another corporation or another job. And I think it opens up for us a unique opportunity to be that sort of pattern interrupt between what they sort of came to expect. Everybody kind of comes to expect this sort of gap between the words on the wall and the actual experience. When we can start to close that gap, I think it lets people drop some of their guard, be more of their authentic selves, and ultimately, turn off that sort of survivor brain that's really burning a lot of mental calories. What do you think about that, Julius?
Well, I think generally what I observe is it needs to be work. We need to first work on an ideal that we can even be emotionally intelligence in the workplace, if that makes sense. So what I mean by that is most workplaces just don't feel safe to really apply for these things. So, before I did work at the People Readiness Company, my profession was a brander. So talking about values and creating culture from a branding point of view was kind of like my career. And it's very easy for us as companies to say, well, we need different values and we need to stand for something and all these type of things. A little bit what you said, right? We're putting all these beautiful words on the wall, but then in reality, it's not experienced. And so it's not experienced by our customers, it's not experienced by our employees, et cetera. Because what we are missing is building also some sort of that safe space where that humane element, that emotional element, like values is something very intrinsic. So for me to actually be vulnerable or to act upon my values, I need to be in a place that even is receptive to that. And I think that's what most companies are missing, the receptiveness of, like creating a space, you can call it psychological safe, or I just want to right now just create a space where that actually can happen, if that makes any sense. So there's really more to just throwing words on there. It's building that space and then exercising it too. And I think that's what we really do in our work at the People Readiness Company is given an organized space of how employees can exercise, sharing about their emotions, listening to other co-workers and how they feel about certain things, and then kind of level it up to top level management and make that part of a culture, like being honest with each other, being integral with each other becomes part of the culture. And that's when I see companies can really thrive and utilize culture as an accelerator also for growth, for profit, and all these beautiful things.
Well, I love that you, in your previous life, were a brander, right? You were talking about values from that sort of external perspective of what the market could come to expect from a company, right? A company puts out these advertisements that make all these claims about their product or about their service, and the actual client experience is many times, like, I don't think Matthew McConaughey drives a Lincoln or whatever he drives, right? Like many times that actual experience is a little bit different than what you might see on the commercial or what you might see in the ad. But I think the closer that the client experience or the customer experience is to those claims, the higher the perceived quality of that brand, or the more trust that brand is able to build in the marketplace. But if you think about sort of a brand is just sort of the external representation of a bunch of values, to your point. And, I always kind of think about it as like a globe or like as a ball. Companies spend a lot of time making sure that the outside of that ball or the outside of that sphere is very shiny and very presentable. But all the employees exist within that ball. You know what I'm saying? And like the wall of that ball is one thing. And so external folks are looking at that brand from the outside. Internally, we also make a bunch of claims about our organization. And to the extent that there's that massive gap between the claims, the words on the wall, the values and so forth, and the actual lived experience, which is a fine way to sort of define the culture, that creates a lot of distrust inside the organization. So I think that this branding perspective is really smart. And I think we as practitioners who are trying to build these cultures of integrity, we can learn a lot from reading marketing books or reading branding books, because those books are really just talking about the outside, surface of this thing that we sort of control or try to influence the inside surface of. You named your company People Ready. Can you tell us a little bit about, how would you define people readiness, and how does this kind of connect to this emotional intelligence topic that we're talking about, which is really kind of the mortar in the wall of culture that we're all trying to build?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the company's name is the People Readiness Company, and basically our core mission is to turn resistance into readiness. And what we mean by that, I think, let me just give a practical example. I think that we all have experience. We come up with a new idea. It can be even, something in a compliance space. It can be some technological advancement, or just a cool creative idea, that you want to kind of like pitch to your team. And what you receive most of the time is all the arguments why that it's not a good idea, why it's not happening, why they have no time, all these different reasons why something won't happen. And that, to me, in a nutshell, is resistance. So if you look at anything in a company, I mean, specifically today, most corporations in the world have to go through some sort of a transition, right? So whether it is AI driven, whether it is technological driven, whether it's culture driven, no matter what it is, there's an urge to change something. But then change is hard. And so we mainly focus on the fact on how do we organize and strategize the change. So we come up with great papers, great strategies, we prepare everything. But then as soon as that strategy hits the workforce, like you basically lifting it over into implementation or deployment, it fails because people aren't ready. They resist whatever you had planned the next is, so to speak. And that's what we are addressing. We help entire workforce through basics of emotional intelligence, like two main qualities, which we call self-awareness and growth mindset. We train that on a daily basis. So I think like it's more like an attitude. So your employees become kind of like an attitude of becoming receptive and be able to respond to change versus reject or resist it. And that's the key of our work.
So these two elements are what? You said that it's self-awareness and a growth mindset.
Correct.
Let's talk a little bit about that self-awareness. And Evie, of course, weigh in anytime here.
Okay,
but I want to talk about this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just chime in, and I'm just going to pose this question out there when it comes to compliance programs and training, what we've done for the last 3 years. Were we naive? Are we thinking that when we give out this information, keep what Julius said in mind, is are we really naive thinking it's sticking? So, on his website, he knows that he notes there is a huge gap of when people are able to actually receive the information, maybe only 16% do. So I just find that fascinating and thinking a lot of compliance professionals may be not considering all what we're talking about, the self-awareness and potential to, the growth mindset, which is a fairly new concept for me, at least in the past year or so. Are we considering it or not? So I think I'm really excited to be here today to just have this conversation, because I think it may open more eyes to the compliance professionals on should we be doing more and how do we do more? And maybe when we look at compliance training records of people who complete it, are we looking at the ones who don't and understand why they don't? And so answering those kinds of questions. Where do you think we get that wrong?
Where do you think we get that wrong? Or give me an example of how someone might be thinking about that with the wrong sort of mindset and how they perhaps should be thinking about it that would help. I mean, because like so much of the struggle is like everybody has limited resources. Everybody has a limited time. There's fires all over the place. Where do we spend our time?
Exactly. I think, yeah, that's it. You hit it right on the head. It's time, right? I mean, I used to be one of the people who would chase 20% of the population to complete their training because our parent company said you had to complete this training. And there were at least 2,000 people in this organization that did not. So I called, emailed, and texted, and I got it to like 97%, which was great. Wow. We were happy with that. But then we never took the time. And this is a good learning experience, right? We never took the time to look back and looking at who they were, where they were, one location, one manager, one director, whatever that scope was, and try to figure it out why that happened. And I think now when I say it's time to level up of compliance, those are the questions we need to be asking. And, using tools and Julian's company or tools like that is how we can get to the next level.
I feel for me, if I can add something on this, I sometimes think when I look at companies, we just never really thought about people as people, right? So what I mean by that, of course, we understand that people work in our organization, and but I think most companies look at them from a management perspective. How do I manage them best so I get something in return? But we're missing the fundamentals and what keeps or what makes us human. So one that I felt very interesting statistic is that all of our decisions are based on, like 95% of our decisions are based on emotional patterns. So if you think of that, and then how little time we spend on uncovering these patterns, specifically at work, while lying to us, say that we make rational decisions. None of us makes truly rational decisions. But I think that's the hoax or the thing that we're running into when it comes to the corporate world, that we're looking at numbers, we're looking at efficiency, and people are just an equity that gets us there. But we are missing the point in truly understanding how do we, like, what defines them as human, what makes them make decisions, what makes them perform and whatnot, so that we utilize that actually for both, you know, the well-being and the grace for the employee, but also for our own performance and results as a company.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. If we don't even know ourselves and we mistakenly, to your point, think that we just take in data and, you know, run a bunch of ones and zeros and algorithms and spit out the most sort of like logical answer, when in fact it's all the decision making is perhaps happening below the surface, like as outlined in that famous book, Thinking Fast and Slow. If all those decisions are actually happening, or a disproportionate or more than we think of those decisions are happening below the surface in that sort of subconscious or that in that emotional state, well, then how can we actually influence everybody else in the organization if we don't even know how we ourselves work? But I think when we can shift that perspective a little bit, we can really drive a lot more influence. And look, at the end of the day, none of us can sort of create by ourselves an authentic culture of integrity. You just can't do it. You can't be quote unquote responsible for compliance. At best, you can help create and be responsible for the circumstances that drive more compliant behavior, but all those decisions that make up that culture, as however it's defined sort of in the moment, is a function of a bunch of individual decisions, and the company itself is this voluntary collective. So when we can shift our perspective a little bit, I think we can really move the needle in a more meaningful way, because every business is a people business right now.
I agree. I just like to add, so when you describe the situation, right, these are all a bunch of individuals that we basically have no control over, because all our decision making comes from an filtered perspective. Then we actually have chaos, and I think we can eliminate the chaos by including ideas of emotional intelligence in our corporate structure, because to that point, if we become aware of our emotions and what we feel in what circumstances, that's the first thing. The second thing, of course, is then how do we deal with this? Like it's going a little bit deeper. Like, what makes me feel like that? And if I have these two components together, and the fun thing is it's really just about awareness. Like, I think there's also this kind of like saying you only can change something if you be aware that there's a problem, right? So the same goes with our emotions. You only can kind of like deal with your emotions if you be aware that you actually have an emotional reaction. So awareness is such a critical part for everything that comes after. So that's why I think that's one of the most important qualities a workforce should train or should be kind of like actively practicing. And the second, and then I hand over, is really that growth mindset, because the question then is, how do I receive the chaos? And you can receive the chaos and dive in, right? And said, everything is frustrating, I have no idea what's happening. Or you can observe it with a little bit of distance, detach yourself, and just respond. You know, it's just another thing, and you just address it one thing after the other. And suddenly you have a much more productive workforce, no matter what the circumstances are.
Well, I think that growth mindset is so critical, I think it's critical in life, but I think it's particularly critical in our space, because there is so much opportunity for us to drive more impact forward. But what comes along with our space is, like you said, a ton of change, a ton of chaos, a ton of new risks, right? You know, there's new regulations coming out. There's new workforce challenges. I mean, think back in 2019 versus 2022, how much change every organization had to go through as we move toward this sort of work from home, pervasive environment. And so I think in all volatility, yes, there's a bunch of sort of negative, there's a bunch of like worst case scenarios, and it's very easy to catastrophize it. But I think to your point, there is a ton of opportunity always in that chaos. And if we can not get caught up in that sort of negative view of it, fine, we can acknowledge those things. Of course, we're at our heart risk mitigators. We need to acknowledge it, and we need to be able to, understand and see that like negative consequence or that negative potentiality. But if we also can, clean those glasses off a little bit and see the opportunity in it, it really gives us a lot of opportunity to start to drive that impact forward and basically increase the positive outcome of our efforts. On your website, I think Evie just talked about this. On your website, it talks about, only 16% of initiatives, let's talk about this stat. 16% of initiatives actually move forward. Well, that means 84%, over 4/5 don't end up sort of getting off of the ground. That's a ton of wasted effort. And if we can increase that just by a marginal percentage, we can really multiply our efforts forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. And I think that's what happens when you think of people first, when you kind of clear out some of the noise and, spend time on mindfulness and self-awareness and the growth mindset. This quote comes to mind when I think about these things. It's the quiet mind is more productive. So all these things that we are talking about in turn will lead to more productivity on the end and, enhancement of the compliance program. Because if you can have everyone in the company be aware to an extent of the compliance program, if you had 16% and by next year with this program, you double the number, it keeps going, right? We just have to decide that we want to change the trend, that we want to be away from the more directive kind of compliance program and be the partner. On your initial video that you showed at the beginning, I loved what she said in there. You have to be, in order to be a compliance person or an ethics and compliance person, you have to be a people person. And you really have to make and build those relationships. It's probably one of the most important things about compliance people. Yes, you have to know the laws, but you need to be a people person first. And another thing that you said that I love too, and I've been thinking about it a while, is that almost every compliance person should be taking sales and marketing training, because we are all in the business of selling things, and it's selling rules, it's selling policies, it's selling, training, because you don't want to force the people to take the training. You want them to be welcoming and transformed to take the training. So we all act on emotion, and we need to learn how to get that done, because that is everything. And Julia said it, and you've said it too.
Well, let me say it again. It's a game of influence, okay? It really is a game of influence. We can't really force anyone to do anything. Everybody has to voluntarily do those things. And I think as we build those relationships across the sort of stakeholder stack, whether it's to our counterparts and our same sort of level, whether it's, broadly to the stakeholders that we're trying to influence, or even up top to leadership or the board, when we start to prioritize the human, we start to prioritize the opportunity for influence, and we start to build those relationships, we naturally start to see how we can better frame out whatever our own initiative is in terms that are going to resonate with that person. And again, we don't have riding crops and bullhorns. Those don't work anymore. What we have are words, and what we have are relationships. Those are sort of the pathways through which we can drive change and so forth. And for those of us who feel like our wheels are spinning, or that, we're pushing a string up the hill, or we're living that sort of, we're having a Sisyphus summer, it's time for us to maybe rethink how we're showing up, which of these sort of fixed mindset, which of these fixed mindset tendencies might be sort of coloring our interactions, and how can we rethink how we show up? Evie, it looked like you were going to say something there.
Well, we actually have some great questions that came in through, so why don't we take a look at those?
Let's do that.
Yeah.
So let's start with this question from Doug, the one and only Doug Howman. A round of applause for Doug. He'll be back on the show pretty soon. He says, when people offer and support changes, the benefit typically accrues to the company, such as better products, more sales, reduced costs, etc. How should companies, or us, how should we incentivize the support of a culture of change? How can the benefits accrue to employees? Or put it another way, how can we better frame out the benefits that a true culture of integrity, or a true culture of a true ethical culture will have on an individual employee? Let's start with you, Evie, and then we'll go to you, Julius.
So how can the benefits accrue to employees? And I think it's one day at the time, one conversation at a time. We talk about our middle managers all the time. And, benefit is if you have everyone throughout the conversation is able to have a conversation about ethics, right? Like, if you come to your workplace, I'll give myself a shameless plug. Here is Let's Talk About Ethics t-shirt. If you lead, you will transform the organization from day to day. My dream is to build organizations that put ethics and compliance and integrity forward in their culture and in everything that they do. So having backsplash with ethics and compliance, having stuff on your desk, so if you walk into the manager's office and you see a Let's Talk About Ethics Cube or something that opens that conversation, having those conversations in your daily lives, not because you have to, but because you want to, is when you're truly transforming the conversation. And it's at any level. I know we talk about middle manager level a lot and having those conversations, but the director level, the C-suite level, like everyone should be able to have those conversations. And I think that's really the transformation. And then being able to measure it, holding managers accountable. There is certain levels of reporting, but that's where we want to go. But I feel like flipping it back to what Julian and some of the work that he's doing is, he can show how to do that and how to be more open and having certain exercises. And I think it's probably a really good time for him to spend a little time to talking about how he makes the magic happen, so that our viewers and listeners can kind of understand. But when I listen to it, and I get really excited, because I think when we first met, we didn't think what he was doing and what I believe in was as related. But the more we have this conversation, it's like so related. And I think that's the next level of compliance.
Yeah. So what would you say to that, Julius? What would you say to that question? Up to 5,000 emojis. We're only halfway through the session. This is about to be I knew this was going to be a good one. Go ahead. Over to you.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, thanks, Doug, for the question. I have a bit of a perspective. Like, I want to remove the idea that incentivization is always about money. So I experienced something different, right? So I experienced that people want to do a good job and people want to be part of something. So let's say if you do have a culture of change, or a culture where people are receptive to change and they're moving things along and they're moving things forward and they're building better products and they're, be a part of making that company successful. Honestly, that's what an employee wants. So I don't think there needs to be a ton of incentivization. There just needs to be a culture of acknowledgement that we are in this together. You be heard and you be seen, and you be part of this bigger contribution. And that, to me, and in our experience, is the ultimate incentivization that you can give. And that would be my answer. It's just build culture around it, make that transparent, acknowledge it. But in our experience, you guys can remove the financial component. It doesn't make such a big of a difference. People want to be part of it, and they want opportunities to be part of it. And that's the biggest incentive, the biggest incentive you can give somebody.
I think you guys put that really well. And I want to pivot over to this question from Michelle. Michelle, thanks for this question. She asked, what would you say to someone who says that ethics is not the job of compliance? Ethics is the job of the executive team, and compliance is in the role of making sure everyone follows the rules. What would you say to that? Let's start with you, Julius, and then go over to you, Evie.
Well, I would like to hand that over to Evie, because I don't have too much of an opinion or experience in that.
Oh, I would say that ethics is everybody's job. Like, why would we say that ethics is compliance job? We all want to work in the better working conditions. So why would it be only ethics and compliance job? Like I said before, my job and passion is really training the management level team on how to have these conversations. But really the ultimate goal is that everyone has more ethics and compliance, and they're able to discuss anything and everything, from the Coldplay, I will do a silly little thing here, right? Everybody was excited and talking about that, to some of the violations that TD Bank did. I mean, it could go across any level, but everyone has a responsibility. It's almost like your children home. We saw Gio, right? You sit at your dinner table and have conversations about anything and everything. It includes ethics, it includes values. So it's the same for all the employees. So it's not just with compliance, it's really everyone in the company. I do want to read another question that we got from Nicole.
Before we do that,
yes.
I would just say to that question, do people follow the rules in a low ethics culture? They don't. Like, they go hand in hand. The ethics wrap around that. Like, the ethics is what allows for people to do the right things outside of a written rule. So to me, divorcing those two things or sequestering them to just the executives can speak on ethics, I think is extremely short-sighted. And to what Julius was saying before, it's not how the world works. It's not how people work. When we can drive an ethical culture, when we can drive a culture that people actually believe in and actually trust, the odds of them following the rules are disproportionately higher than they otherwise will be. So splitting those two things apart, I think, don't make a lot of sense. Let's go to the next question here, Abby.
All right. So the question comes from Nicole. How do you promote these conversations with remote employees, and how do you get more engagement? So I would start with your immediate remote team and open it up to a conversation and see where it goes. And then maybe create coffee, virtual coffee over Zoom on ethics and compliance, and anyone who wants to pop in. I can tell you that I've made so many great connections via LinkedIn, via these Zoom calls, and they're engaging, entertaining, and having those conversations. So I think you have to find a way, you be the voice of ethics and compliance for your own department, and just reach out. I speak about this sometimes. Give yourself a goal. So one of my first corporate jobs, I had a boss, and his goal was to meet everyone. He was ethics and compliance. Well, actually, I don't even know if that was his title yet, but he was the general counsel and vice president of the company. And his goal was to meet every single person in the company. And while I was a junior kind of employee, I had to schedule the meetings. It was huge pain. Now I can appreciate all the things that it gave us, because number one, we did it by groups. So, let's say you're going to meet with a certain department and there's 5 or 10 people. So it's not just one-on-one, but you have that group meeting with you. You get to hear what they're doing. You get to tell them what you're doing, and you create this conversation and build a relationship. And those people talk to other people. So when you call the next group, they will be ready, and it kind of goes, and that's how you start. And when you feel you want to have an open kind of a coffee hour on your calendar and anyone can pop in, I think those are great opportunities. And when you have the opportunity to travel to remote location, I would certainly work on scheduling time with your employees there, just the meet and greet, nothing fancy, nothing with agendas, just meet and greet. And that's where you get to learn a lot of great information. But I think it's a really great question. And in order to get the engagement, you have to invest some time into, making that happen.
Yeah, and I think in order to get the engagement, you have to add value. We helped a client who was trying to kind of relaunch their program. And we built a bunch of pieces of messaging that were about how this department, how they were leveraging behavioral science to drive a more ethical culture. Like, everybody loves grabbing a book in the airport that's about behavioral science or how the brain works or how we think, right? Like, we are all very interested in ourselves and learning more about ourselves. When we can bring some value to help reframe what our role is, it's not just about putting, the do not run at the pool sign on the fence, but it's rather about building a culture of integrity where people want to do the right thing. And we can sort of slate that in an interesting way and add value. I think we drive a lot more engagement. I also want to share, Julius, it sounds like you were about to jump in here, but before we do that, I wanted to share this thing that Wendy just put in here, and I'm going to kind of botch it. Oh, here it is. This was back to the question that Michelle asked about, sort of divorcing ethics from compliance. And Wendy said, I think this is a great anecdote, and I think this is a great picture of what I was trying to say. Ethics isn't about following the rules. I recall a case of a company selling 30-year annuities to people in their 80s and 90s. Was that legal? Yes. Did they follow the rules? Sure. Was that ethical? No. And I think we as leaders, the executive team, the board, they want a company that does the right thing 9 times out of 10. And I think reslating our role as folks that can help create the circumstances for more people to do the right thing gives us a lot of opportunity to reframe what we're doing again and drive more of that impact forward. Sorry, Julius, go ahead. Over to you, buddy.
I wanted to kind of like chime in on the question of how do you actually promote these conversations. I think both of you said the right things. Something that we experience is to, again, this idea of self-awareness. You do get better conversations if people are in touch with their emotions, and you do get a more honest transaction, like a more honest, back and forth when people, again, are aware of their emotions. So what we do at the People Readiness Company is basically organize these conversations, right? So part of our subscription model is not just technology to train, emotional awareness and emotional intelligence, but then also to facilitate conversations where teams meet, share about their emotions, and listen to others. And that's such an essential piece to the entirety that we're talking about, is really also be able to listen to others and then co-experience with your teammates, go through something together, et cetera, et cetera. So that, in our experience, really drives high levels of engagement, because people then start truly working and collaborating together. And everything that Ivy said is true. You can organize it yourself. I think it's always a time thing. If you have to have multiple one-on-ones, I think the neat thing of what we created is it's just kind of like an out-of-the-box solution that people are in constant conversation with each other, and they're in constant training and kind of like connection with themselves through their daily training of questioning how they feel in certain circumstances, and then bring that off on a kind of like team level of sharing. That has massive impact. So that not just because of, that's what we do, but I think in general, everybody, like my biggest tip for companies would always, if they don't want to do it with us, facilitate space where people can actually talk in a safe environment. That's where you get true and meaningful outcome.
I love that. And somebody put in the chat is blowing up. Thank you guys so much. This is awesome. But somebody put in there, be what you want to see. And I think to your point, Julius, if we can start to make space, it doesn't even have to be corporately. It can be with our own team. It can be with ourselves. The odds of us starting to imbue more of this kind of a vibe throughout our company is a lot higher. So I want to get super tactical now. Julius, you talked a little bit about some of your tools, but I want to get tactical of like what tools and strategies can we use to assess emotional intelligence and people readiness during transformational initiatives, A, and then B, how can we kind of integrate that into the hiring and onboarding process? There's so much change going on right now. AI, like we talked about earlier, is kind of ripping through all of our organizations. How do we start to kind of assess this emotional intelligence and people readiness in anticipation of this change? And how do we start to better screen folks that we might be hiring, or how do we kind of embed that in their minds during the onboarding process?
All right. Yeah. So assessments. So there are assessments out there. We of course offer assessments as well that have different levels of depth. The only thing that, even though we offer assessments, I think assessments always have a very static outcome, right? So what it means is it's a moment in time. So just because you capture something in a moment of time doesn't mean 2 months, 3 months later that moment in time entirely changed. So that's a little bit my hesitation on just betting on assessments. So I like the combination between assessments and then real-time data. Like, how do we integrate readiness? And again, going back to these core qualities that I have mentioned earlier, self-awareness and our growth mindset. How do I create data around it on a day-to-day use? And that's, of course, what we do at the People Readiness Company. So usually when we onboard and work with companies, we start with an assessment. The assessment, again, is a great opener in understanding and getting context and see where my workforce is at. Then we onboard them on our software, where mainly each member of your team, and the good thing is it's not just for senior level, it's truly for all levels of employees. We ask them the basic questions. How did you feel about activities throughout your days? So we basically synchronize your entire calendar with this application, meetings, commutes, whatever you do, and then you just have basic symbols, emojis to respond to these questions. I felt good, or I felt kind of like it drained my energy, things like that. Very simple, and to keep it simple. And so now together, you have a potential, which is your assessment, and then you have a response, which is that day-to-day interaction. And that really builds meaningful data. So we can say, right now is a good time to, it seems to be that your workforce is ready and responsive. So they perform really well in these two qualities. Or that we say right now, they're probably in a stage of hyper and overwhelmed, and it wouldn't be a really good time to just throw another thing at them, because at this point, they're not really able to digest that. So Again, to maybe fully address then your question, our assessments or a ton of other assessments. So there are assessments out there who do that. There are advanced emotional intelligence assessments, and maybe also to pull that teeth, emotional intelligence and what we do is a little different. So we're using core qualities of emotional intelligence, but there's a reason why we call it readiness. And to me, that it's really about the ability. Maybe I explain it this way. For me, if emotional intelligence is a tool set that you have available, right? You have a hammer, a screwdriver, and all these different things. Emotional readiness or people readiness translate, am I capable to pick the right tool at the right time at the right moment? And that's really the crucial part, right? It's same with IQ. You can have a ton of high IQ employees. That doesn't mean they make smart decisions for your companies. So in the same way, you can have a ton of high EQ people. That doesn't mean they are emotionally doing the right thing for, in the context of being part of a team, et cetera, et cetera. So that to me is really the key to readiness. It's how do we apply these things so they become meaningful in a corporate setting.
So Evie, how do you think compliance leaders can start to use these readiness principles to foster a more, receptive compliance culture today? Like, what can they start doing today to start taking, we have 6,000 emojis. This is a home run episode. People are absolutely loving it. The chat is absolutely blowing up. How do we take these concepts from up in the air, bring them down to the ground and start, implementing some things to start, advancing the ball forward, so to speak?
So like I said before is, thinking of people, employees first, right? I would certainly consider having conversation with someone like Julius at his company and maybe taking a look at my onboarding process. I mean, we have to start somewhere, right? And you can't do it all at once. As we know, there's limited resources. So if you acknowledge that and maybe we decide that from now on going forward, we may want employees coming into our company who have some level of self-awareness and the growth mindset, maybe that's a step one. I think it's a good one, to start looking at that. Hopefully it's approved, but I think it's good. Then you look at who you have in the population and maybe working on finding ways to reach those employees. But there's many different ways. I almost call it like the Compliance 360 program, where you look at what your board does and what kind of training they have, what your C-suite training looks like. Do you have compliance ambassadors to help you with your engagement opportunities for employees when it comes to ethics compliance? And then finally, the managers. Are you teaching your managers anything? Because I identified a gap. Many companies have a beautiful paragraph in their code of conduct that says, hey, if you're a manager, you are our ethics leader, but then there is nothing happens in between. There is the expectation, but nothing happens. You've identified it as well. And giving you a little anecdote on this topic is I was in New York City and I got a chance to meet a white collar prosecutor for the New York City. And I asked him, I figured there was a good opportunity to ask a question of someone where I don't generally meet. And I said, you prosecute all these big cases. Where is the issue at the company? And he said, middle managers. So we know, right? But how much time do we spend? So that would be probably where I would be focusing on. Yes, trying to get the right people in the door with the right skills, qualities, open mindset, and self-awareness. But also, I want to make sure that I am investing in my managers because they're really the ones who are very vulnerable.
So on that point, a couple of months ago, we put out this, not my words, people loved it, the Middle Manager Toolkit. It's free. Joe, if you can find that, maybe drop that in the chat. But it has a bunch of tools that you can really, a lot of us, really resonate with what you just said. Middle managers have a disproportionate, impact on the culture of an individual employee. Like, people quit a manager, they don't quit a company. People say that all the time. We as compliance or HR folks recognize that there's this opportunity there, and we probably recognize that there's more we can be doing at that level, but sometimes it's hard to get started because it seems like such an overwhelming project. It seems like an elephant to eat. So Joe, if you can find that link and drop that in the chat, I'd encourage you guys to take that, leverage it. If you find it helpful, it's got some training. There it is. He put it on at 12:54. Go ahead and download that. There's some great tools in there that you can leverage right off the shelf and make some slight alterations to start pushing the ball forward. But we're not going to wave a magic wand and then ding, turn on all the middle managers. It's an ongoing process. Right. It's like building a bonfire, and you have to keep feeding a bonfire wood. You have to keep feeding it material to burn to keep that kind of reaction going. So it's never going to be a one and done thing, but it pays dividends. It's a massive point of leverage. Go ahead, Evie.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, and that's why I, keeping that in mind, and with all the experience that I had with, building training programs and identifying these things, I had put together, and I call it the integrity playbook, where I teach the managers, and it's really laid out. It tells them the who, the what, the how of how to be it, using tools like what you note in your, middle manager toolkit. There has to be a slew of information provided, but it's not only about giving the managers the tools, you have to teach them how to use it.
And I think, go ahead. Let me just say, and I think it's not just also about teaching them, you also have to sell them on the value of what we're talking about, because they might not really see it, right? Like, there is like a 95% of employees who work for a manager who talks about ethics frequently, which is only once a month, by the way. This was based on a study. Once a month, that manager is talking about ethics. 95% of those people look to them as a mentor, as someone that they want to emulate, someone they want to be like. Okay, that's a lot of power that a manager can sort of pull forward into themselves to drive more influence across their team, whose production their own job is sort of determined by. So we have to maybe sell them a little bit as we give them the fishing rod to teach them how to fish. Go ahead.
Right. So it's about, giving the tools. But again, like you said, it's providing information, feedback, and it's ongoing process. It is not like, here is a stack of papers and, go home and go do your homework and talk to your employees. It's really holding your hands. I almost look at it like you're training your managers as being the mini compliance officers, if you think about that. How much training do you expect of your compliance officers in your companies to have? How many CEUs do you want them to have a year? So you kind of have to translate the knowledge that they have into the managers, but in the small bite-sized pieces, because managers are busy managing their operations and managing the employees. So you have to find a way to make it, I see it as lunch and learn, maybe once a month, every 2 weeks, maybe initially a little more aggressive program, but then continue the conversation throughout the year. It's not like you can just give them training and then walk away. It has to be ongoing. And this is part of this conversation, part of what Julius has said. It's ongoing. It has to be authentic. I saw a comment in the chat that said it also genuine. All those things account to something, and all the baby steps we make will make a good, great company culture when we take our time.
Well, and I think to that point, when we can stop focusing on self, and we can stop and we can sort of quiet that our own self-preservation, our own fixed mindset, we can start to spend more of our time and effort externally focused on the people around us. And I think as we drop our self-focus, we naturally start to build more trust with those individuals who we're talking with. And that starts to compound throughout the organization, at least from your own personal brand perspective. I want to address this both to you, Evie, and to Julius. Amber dropped a great question here. Thanks for this question, Amber. Any suggestions, and anybody in the chat, of course, respond to this as well. Any suggestions for an analyst level risk/compliance/ethics employee that basically has no influence on middle management or C-level decisions? We know as a department that this is so very needed, especially as we are heading into a merger, but management is being largely kept out of the transition, and C-level has not done any readiness evaluations or training. What would you say to encourage somebody here at this level who feels like they might be hitting that kind of a brick wall?
Find your own way. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just say from a neutral point of view, I think it's sadly, first of all, that Amber is not the only one who experienced that. That's sadly statistically, and in my experience, the reality that just, that specifically when it comes to merger and acquisition, there is no preparedness from the workforce. And that's why all of these mergers, who has heard from a merger that just went through smoothly when it came to cultural integration or workforce integration? I have never heard anybody telling me a lot of positive stories. And I'm not trying to advertise our tool, things like that, some process that allows employees to actually consider themselves and consider others in that process is key. We just have to first of all, learn how to deal with things that are uncertain. We have to learn these things. I mean, you didn't learn these qualities in school. It's nothing that we have in our studies. It's just, we are just very unprepared when it comes to facing the unknown. And that goes for everything also outside of work. And so the key to me is really do something that helps them or helps people to prepare. That's the best I can say and recommend. And whatever tool you choose and whatever company that should consult, but make that the essential piece of whether or not, for example, your merger is going to be successful. I mean, there's a reason why private equity is betting on risk elimination by now, because they know, that is where my money. That's where my money goes up or down. So, but for some reason, it's not part of our company culture. We do these things, we throw it at the people, and then we wonder. And honestly, one last sentence, I come to the conclusion that we just accept it because we have an excuse. So from a high level,
exactly.
We want that because we can blame the people, and the people are always that mystery that nobody can solve. So if everything goes south, I have my excuse, my scapegoat. That's, after doing that now for a little bit, my conclusion and why that is still today the way it was 10 years ago.
Well, the nice thing about excuses is it's like they're a nice cozy blanket. There's a lot of responsibility you can push out. There's a lot of, hey, it's not my fault. And what that is at its root is that sort of fixed mindset, that sort of victim mentality. Listen, every single lock can be picked. It's a bunch of human beings that we're trying to influence. And guess what? We're a human being ourselves. So the more we can tune into that, the more we increase the odds that we're able to drive that impact and that influence forward. And something you just said, we're going to run a couple minutes long. So, you'll love it.
Sorry.
Something you just said really resonated with me, because you said there's a reason that private equity is trying to de-risk transactions. They do a bunch of diligence before they buy a company, just the same way you send a house inspector in before you cut that big check for a house and take on that mortgage. They're trying to de-risk an organization. And part of professionalizing an organization is driving the risk down, right? You're driving up the tolerance of, the precision, right? You're driving more precision in a manufacturing setting. You're driving more sort of repeatable processes throughout the organization. All those things de-risk an organization. I would argue that nothing de-risks an organization more than building a true culture of integrity where people are doing the right thing consistently. That is a great way, depending on who you're talking to, who you're trying to influence, that you can reframe what we're talking about. Listen, this ethics and compliance stuff, this can either be a bumper sticker on a car, or it can be the nitrous in the engine that helps that car run down the road faster, drive more enterprise value, drive faster growth, drive higher employee engagement, and drive ultimately more enterprise value, which is what everybody gets compensated for. So again, there's always a way to connect what we're doing to something that someone that we're trying to influence cares about. Evie, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say to Amber, educate yourself. I mean, there's so much value in Ethicsverse and many other places where you can get ethics and compliance program kind of education. So educate yourself and build the relationships. Even, you're right that you have no influence on middle management or C-levels, but when you have friends, you still can have influence on, the things that you say and the relationships that you make. So I think it may not be a direct kind of influence, but you can influence by knowledge. And I think that's a good place to be, to be the smartest person in the room and be able to have that influence for your employees or around your employees. So.
I love it. All right. Well, listen, this was a phenomenal session as usual. 7,000 emojis. Let's get one more emoji explosion if you guys loved having these guys on as guests. Thank you both, Julius and Evie, for coming on. This was really a lot of fun. We could have talked another hour, so we got to have you guys back soon. Next Thursday, we got another great session from DEI to AI. We're going to be talking about executive orders and 2025 enforcement priorities with the one and only Alyssa Rossi. So you're not going to want to miss that. Also, you can find all the replays on our YouTube channel. You also can find them on the console here. Love you all. Hope you enjoyed the session. Bring your friends, bring your enemies. We'll see you next time.